And Allison, I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carissa. I'm just really excited to be here today. And I'm really grateful to the Bright Spot Network for having me, but also by having me here, you are just acknowledging that caregivers exist and that we need support. And that's huge. That's the first step. So thank you to you and to Bright Spot Network for this opportunity and this time. I am not just happy that I'm here, but I'm really happy that all of you are here today. I want to give you 10 million points for coming today to spend time on yourself, to recognize that you need and you deserve support and community, and realizing that you're part of the story as well. And actually, just being here is a form of self-care. So already you like check the box of doing that just by making this time to be here today. So I really wish that I could see all of your faces. I can just see the little number. I can't even see your names, but I wish that we could be in a room together and we could all just be holding like our favorite warm beverage and we could be hanging out together. But because that's not the case, I'm going to try to use the chat as much as possible so that we can feel like we're together and we can interact. So there's going to be times that I'm going to ask questions and you can put your answer right in the chat. If you're not comfortable and you just want to sit back and listen, that's totally fine. If there's ever a question I ask and you would rather just share that information with me, you can choose hosts and panelists, and it would just go to me and to Carissa, and not to the whole group if you feel more comfortable with that. But we're going to try really hard to make this interactive because I really wish that we could all be in a room together. I want us to start today by grounding in. This helps us sort of come into this space and leave behind whatever we were just doing before this. This might just be like the loveliest 90 seconds of your day. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes or maybe fix your gaze on a fixed spot. I like to put my hand or my hands on my chest. And I ask you to take a deep breath in and out. As you do that, pay attention to how it feels to have your butt and your feet rooted into the chair and the floor beneath them. I want you to feel what it feels like to have those surfaces coming up to support you, and to meet you, and to hold you. Take another big breath in and out. I want you to imagine an empty shelf. And I want you to think of the things that might be swirling in your mind right now, like what you were doing right before this or what the rest of your day might hold. I want you to put each of your thoughts in a container with a lid and put them on the shelf. They're going to be there for you later, but they don't need your attention right now. You're here. I want you to breathe and pay attention to what it feels like with all that space freed up in your mind. And then I'm going to be quiet for about 30 seconds while you just imagine this and just continue with your breathing. All right, let your breath return to normal. Flutter your eyes open. And if you are comfortable, share with us in the chat. How did that feel? Is that something you've done before? Is that something you could do on your own? What does it feel like? How do you feel now versus 90 seconds ago before we started that grounding in? Share with us in the chat if you're comfortable. As you chat, I want to say that in our lives, especially as caregivers, we often just go, 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 and then we sleep. And there's really nothing in the middle. The chat is disabled.
Oh, That's unfortunate.
So right now, while Carissa maybe tries to work some magic, you can put it just like you're doing right now in the question and answer. Let's just use, is that fine? Can we just use the question and answer
Yes.
box
Yeah.
instead?
Yes.
Great. So let's do that. In the question and answer instead of the chat, tell us, how did that feel to do the grounding in? And as you do that, like I was saying, that we just go and we go and we go and we go, and we very, very rarely do we stop until it's time to sleep. And so grounding in gives us an opportunity to be awake, but calm and grounded, which is something that as caregivers, that's not a combination that we often have. Somebody said they felt peaceful to do that. Think about the things that we just did. It's something that you can absolutely do on your own at any point. And so think about that it's not something that you need guiding with. You can just sit, close your eyes, put your hand on your chest and breathe for a bit. Use that Tupperware container analogy. All right. So I would love to know who is here with us today. So if you're comfortable in the chat or in the Q&A, then I would love for you to tell us, are you a caregiver? If so, for whom? Are you a person living with cancer, a cancer survivor, maybe a practitioner? Maybe there's a category that I didn't name. If you're comfortable in the Q&A section, tell us what your role is today. Yeah, somebody said that it's good that it's just for a short period. Yeah. Good. Tell us your role today, caregiver. Yeah. I love to see that there are some practitioners here who also understand that caregivers are part of their work and want to get better. Thank you for that. Yes. Thank you all for sharing. I wish we could spend time on each of your stories. I'm just really glad that you're here today. Thank you. All right. That's helpful to know who's here. Thanks for that. I would love to share a little bit about my story, if you don't mind. This is my husband, Sean. Sean is 43 and he has a rare genetic disease called Fanconi anemia. And that causes bone marrow failure and also cancer at a rate of around 750 times that of the general population. So in the last 11 years, he's had bone marrow transplant, and he's had cancer of the tongue, of the throat twice, of the bladder, of the gums, and about 150 skin cancers. So at a young age, in my 30s, I was thrust into the role of caregiver. And it's really been a part of my daily life ever since. And was something that I was not trained for, something that I was not expecting. In addition, we have a daughter. She turned 16 last week. So as you can imagine, all that goes with having a 16-year-old. And so I'm a caregiver in that way as well. And then a year ago, I started a nonprofit called The Negative Space. And our goal is to help caregivers feel seen and heard. And through that, I do things like this. I speak and I do one-on-one coaching for caregivers. And I have a podcast and with caregiver gift boxes. And so I say all that just to tell you that I am in the trenches with you, caregivers. Like, I'm doing this. I'm here with you. And over the years, as I have tackled all of this stuff, caregiving and parenting and working, I've had so many people look at me with those puppy dog eyes, you know, the eyes, right? And then they say, are you taking care of yourself? Or they sort of, sometimes it's more of an admonition, like, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And this has become even more frequent as the sort of self-care term has gained popularity. So I'm wondering, how many times in the last week have you either heard or seen or read the phrase self-care in the last week? Put that in our Q&A. How many times have you seen it, heard it, read it? Every day. Yeah. Yeah. More than I can count. Yeah. Yes. How many times in the last week has somebody said this to you directly, regardless of what your role is here today? either in person or online, that you should be taking care of yourself or asking what you're doing to take care of yourself. How often has that happened to you in the last week? Every day. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know about you, but when self-care is, it's a buzzword, right? And it comes from a well-meaning place. And when I hear that, I feel like the speaker sees that my life is really busy and that I have this really long to-do list and that they see that. But instead of helping, they add to my to-do list by telling me that on top of everything, I should be taking care of myself on top of everybody else and everything else that I take care of, which to me can feel unrealistic and sometimes can feel really hurtful. So tell me, when someone says that to you, either if it's a person that you know who's saying it to you directly, or you see that, 75th magazine article telling you that, what does that feel like to you when someone tells you that you should be taking care of yourself? What's that feel like? Jonathan says it's irritating. He sees it enough, hears it enough to be irritating. Yeah. How does that feel? Mm, dismissed. Yeah. It's like, you don't even really, really goes right. Yeah. Like a pipe dream. Yeah. Like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Oh, good question. So I think, Chris, I don't know if other people can see
Right.
the,
I don't think they can, right?
okay,
And
got
I'm
it.
so sorry, everyone. Clearly, the way that this webinar was set up, it disabled the chat, and I can't turn it on in the middle. And my apologies.
Okay, no problem. So I'll do a better job of trying to maybe respond to some of the things that I'm seeing. So I'm seeing things in the Q&A, but I think I'm the only one who can see them. So um, yeah, so someone says they appreciate it, at least they recognize that we need the time and the care for themselves. Yeah, I love that. That's like, so the first step. I love that they realize that. And then they just put it on us, right? So it's like they're only half of the battle. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing how you feel. I want you all to know that it is not your fault if you feel stressed or if you feel burned out, because I know that you're doing your best at a very challenging role. Whether you are a caregiver here today, a cancer patient, a cancer survivor, a practitioner, those are all really challenging roles. And if you are stressed out or burned out, it is not your fault. And I want to say that again. It's not your fault. Because sometimes when people start saying things to us about taking care of ourselves, it can feel like we're doing something wrong. It can feel like it's our fault. So I think we just need to bask for a moment in the truth that it's not our fault. So I want you to know that you're doing a really big and a difficult and important job. And it makes perfect sense that you might be feeling stressed out. And I'm glad that the world sees your stress enough to care about it. But I'm sorry that they think the solution is to tell you that you need to care for yourself. I'm sure when you see this, I'm sure you have heard this, this phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. So this phrase has always kind of bugged me. It's always kind of irked me. And I recently figured out why. It is because at its root, this saying implies that you need to take care of yourself because you need to be healthy and well enough to take care of other people. And this is true. And I'm here to say loud and clear that you, as an individual, apart from any role that you have, are worthy of being healthy and well, full stop. Not just so that you can do and you can continue to care for other people, but because you are just worthy. You are worthy of wellness. And I want you to sit in that for a minute and realize you are worthy of wellness, not just so that you can. And sometimes if I get sick or something, my mom says, oh, you can't go down. If you go down, everything else falls apart. And that makes it feel like you only don't want me to get sick because other things won't happen. So I want us to realize that we are worthy of wellness. What does that feel like? Because that really puts, for me, that was a new perspective on that. Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. What does that feel like when you hear that you are worthy of being healthy? You're worthy of wellness as a caregiver. Not just so you can do, but so that you can be. What does that feel like to you? Mm. Someone says it makes them feel confused, oddly selfish. Yeah, yeah. That's I get that it, as caregivers, and I know we have lots of people in the room, but today at this moment, I want to talk to you caregivers that the focus of everyone, and rightly so, is on the person who's receiving care. And so it can feel selfish to say, like, what about me? What do I can I be can I get have wellness too? And so it can feel selfish, but it isn't, because you are a human and you are worthy of being well. And so I want you to realize, to put that selfishness away and realize that it's okay. So, with that statement front of mind, I want us to think about how we can start to do this. So, when you see things on social media about self care, it looks like this, right? And if by chance you have access to the spas and the mountaintop experiences, Chris and I would like some invitations to come along with you. That would be great. But for most of us, our time and our finances and our coverage for our loved ones, it doesn't allow for self-care to look like this. And in some ways that's okay, because having these like big literal mountaintop moments, while nice, they're not realistic and they're not really long lasting. So instead, we want to talk about what are some things we can do that any one of us could do on any given day. I like to call these micro moments. So I want you to start by thinking about the things that you do every single day. And then I want you to think about the things that, is there anything that you can do to make any of those moments just a little more sweet, a little more comforting? So, for example, if you start your day with a hot beverage, coffee or tea, I know I do. I have lots of fun mugs in my house, and I like to strategically choose my mug for the day. I'm going to reach for a mug anyway. I might as well have one that's going to be sort of a good mantra for me, or it's going to make me giggle. When my daughter was young, and I remember one morning she stomped out of the house to the bus. And as soon as she left, I pulled out my Mom Rocks mug. And I was like, oh, really? You bought me this mug years ago. And even though you're mad at me right now, I can still use this mug. So it doesn't take me any extra time, but it just gives me it's just a little boost to have that. The other thing that we all do every day is we get dressed, right? And so you can think about things like, I live in Minnesota where it's very cold. And so I have a lot of blanket scarves. And so this is something that is fashionable. And yet, as you can see me there on surgery day, I can turn it into a pillow. I can turn it into a blanket. It's basically an acceptable way to walk around wrapped in a blanket all day. So I have found ways to do that. If there's any sort of jewelry, different people have given me things over the years that have phrases or things that might feel supportive to me. Or I have socks that say sometimes things that I'm glad I have the shoes covering, but just like these say darn tough. And so just something that to sort of hold on to have a little message for me that day. Or back when we were wearing more of the cloth masks, we chose our masks really intentionally so that when we would go in, they would sort of be a nice little boost for us. And none of these things took me extra time. Other things, this is not me dressed as a Smurf ready for Halloween. Like I said, I live in Minnesota where it's very cold and dark. And so I have a blue light. And this is something that I can just turn on while I'm working, while I'm getting ready. It doesn't take any extra time, but it gives me that little extra boost of sun, which in the winter can really help with mood. Animals, although they're a lot of work, I think that it's the kind of thing that when you think about really taking a moment to enjoy the time with them. Years ago, we were not animal people. And I read an article that said something about how having animals lowers your blood pressure and your heart rate. I was like, okay, let's do it. And it's really, really true. So to see if you have animals in your life, that they're not just another task to do, but that they can really provide some comfort. Baths, I used to think, who has time to take a bath? And then someone sent me a care package that had cookies and bath salts. And I thought, okay, fine. And realized that it's like the most delightful thing because at least, so my daughter's 16. This is not always true with the little ones, but everybody leaves me alone. And again, it's a place and a time in the day when I actually sit and don't do anything. So sort of like I talked about with grounding in, I just go, go, go all day. So even the shower feels like it's, doing a lot of work. But the bath is one time when I feel like I'm sitting and not doing anything, which feels kind of amazing. Nature, anything like this picture right here is what my neighborhood looks like right now. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And so even trying to sit during your day at a place where you can see something beautiful out the window or you can take a walk is something that is free, but really, really feeds your soul. I sort of hate to say the yoga thing because I feel like it's what everybody says, but I have to say that earlier this year, I was just in a really hard spot physically and mentally. And someone said, just try it. Just try this. It's this free YouTube. It's yoga with Adrienne. You can see she's always got her dog there with her. And for a long time, I did this cozy yoga, which was basically just like lying on the floor with a blanket on me and breathing. It was not like feet over the head kind of thing. And I have continued to do it. And it feels like, again, at the time of the day that I stop and I breathe and I sort of come back to myself. And so even though I sort of hate it, feels sort of typical and predictable to say that yoga is what we should do, but there's a reason for that. And so this is this free YouTube channel and she's very accessible. And some of them are just like 7 minutes long. And it's just a good chance to breathe and relax. Another thing I want to say is just to take the chance to ask for something. So I used to see a chiropractor because the stress has, messed with my neck and my back and my head. And so I used to see a chiropractor regularly. And during COVID, we weren't going inside anywhere because of my husband's immune system. So I went without for a long, long, long time. And then one day I thought, I'm just going to ask. And I asked the chiropractor, I said, wouldn't ever by chance like do a session outside, would you? And he said, sure. And so I had gone that whole like a year and a half without getting the service because I didn't ask. And so once I asked and he said that obviously not everyone's going to do that, but I just want you to think about there are some things that might not be able to look the way they did before you were a caregiver or a patient, but just ask and see if there's a way to make it work in the new season that you're in. So these are all tiny things. These are micro moments, but these things add up throughout the day. If you can picture that during the day, if I've got the mug and then I've got the blue light and I've got the snack and I've got the things, they add up in meaningful ways that can really boost us and give us that support that we need. I'm wondering, what are things that you do? Tiny little things that are accessible to anybody that you do that just bring you a little bit of comfort and sweetness in your day. Share with us in the Q&A. And Carissa has fixed it so that now you're going to be able to see each other's answers in the Q&A. Thank you for that. So tell us in the Q&A, what are some things that you do to try to just little tiny things that help care for yourself? Yes, the oxygen mask on an airplane. Someone says that is infuriating to them as well. Yes, agreed. Same comes from the same vein, right? Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, 5 to 10 minute meditation before bed. Kayaking, yes. Getting coffee out of the house is something I look forward to. So that's a huge thing. Having that thing to know that once a week I'm going to go do this thing. And it's like this like little carrot that you're dangling for yourself. Watching old TV and laughing. Yeah. Yes, to be still after everyone has gone to bed. That being still is huge, to not just go, 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 then sleep, but to have a moment. Hiking. Yeah. Nice. So let's think, I want you to think about the things that your friends here in the chat just put and some of the things I mentioned. And I'm not here to add to your to-do list, but I am here to nudge you to think about if there's just one easy little thing that you can do that can make your day a little cozier, a little more sweet. So look at my list, look at the list of your friends here, and is there anything that you want to try or think about? And if so, add that in the Q&A. Yeah, walking. They say that like taking a walk like makes everything better. They're like when you're ready to just like burn it all down, they're like take a walk, and that it really, really helps. And living in a cold climate like I do, it's hard sometimes to make myself do that in those winter months, but it helps even then to get bundled up into it. Yeah, yes, try the cozy yoga for sure. Yes, because it's true. Like if we just say, I'm just gonna sit and relax, right? It's not that easy. And so that's why I would highly recommend it's yoga with Adrienne. And I just Google yoga with Adrienne cozy. And like she's got a whole bunch of cozy ones where it's really simple and easy and cozy. A jigsaw puzzle. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. Relax by moving. So you have to know your body, right? And to think about like maybe lying still or lying in the bathtub would feel terrible to you. And maybe like it's that getting out and moving that will feel, but you got to know what it is for you and to find ways to build that in. Awesome. Oh, nice. Thank you. She just put yoga with Adrienne in the chat. Great. Can they see the chat even if it's disabled for them?
I hope so.
Okay, maybe put it in the Q&A just to be sure.
I'll put it there too.
Great. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. So I just told you about some things that are really doable, but there are also things that you have to do, right? And we talked about how it's really frustrating that we're saying that yard work, nobody can talk to me. I love it. It's frustrating that we're having people are telling you to do things, right? And so I hate to do that. And that's why I love this quote here. Shouting self-care at people who actually need community care is how we fail people. And so, I know I'm preaching to the choir today because you're the ones that need the self-care. But I want to tell you that a really important form of self-care is actually delegation. So getting your community isn't here today. I wish that they were. But if they were here, we would tell them all the things they could be doing to help. But because they can't, delegating is a form of self-care. Every item that you are able to remove from your to-do list provides you with some time and some energy to spend on yourself, to breathe, to rest, to go to bed a little earlier, maybe to do one of the activities that you talked about. And so think about that delegating piece. And I know that delegating itself can feel like a really big job. And you might be thinking like all of these things. I feel like I should be able to do it all myself. Or it's just easier to do it by myself. Or maybe when people offer to help, I'm not sure what to say or what they're willing to do. Sometimes I feel like I'm trying to be a matchmaker between this person who said, what can I do? And the list of things that I need to have done. So I want to give you a practical tip that I have found to be a game changer for me in the area of delegation. And that is this app. It's a free app designed for caregivers. It's called IANA Care, and IANA stands for I Am Not Alone. And it's basically like Caring Bridge meets Lots of Helping Hands meets Meal Train, all combined. So you download the app from the App Store for free, and then you can invite people to be on your team. So you can either do that through, there's a text way, or you can get a link and you can put it on social media or in an email. And then you can use it to send updates to people on your team or to DM people on your team. And then you could make requests. So you could say, like, if I know that we're having surgery next week, I could say, we're going to need dinner on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I can put that in there. I can say, we don't eat dairy. We've had a lot of lasagna lately, make enough for 4 people, leave it on the front steps. I can put all of that information. I hit go. It goes to the people on my team. They get a text message that says, Allison needs some help. They can see all the details. If they're able to help, they just click a button that says, I got this. And then all the information and the details goes on their calendar. And then I get an alert that says, Susie's got it. I don't have to talk to anybody. So there's none of this like back and forth. Can't you? What time? On the doorstep, doorbell, all of those things. They have everything they need. And I don't have to talk to anybody. If somebody looks at the text and can't do it, they just click the button that says, not this time. And I don't have to worry about like who's got a busy week and who can cook and who can't and who can drive and all of that. So I can make requests for everything, for meals, for rides, for pet care, for lawn care, for errands. Like I can make up whatever kind of request I want. And it can go out to the people on my team. If I have someone on my team who doesn't drive, they can say, I don't drive. I don't want to get alerts about things like rides, so that they're not bothered in those ways. You can also have things in there like you can put an Amazon wish list in and people can give you gift cards. So by doing this, it's, it feels like it's hard work. It sounds like, to set it up, which it really isn't. It's pretty simple. But every item you delegate, every meal that somebody else makes for you and brings over, just gave you what, 60, 90 minutes back in your day. And that's time that you can spend on yourself or by being less exhausted, less ragged, less run down because that item was taken off of your list. So whether it's IanaCare or a different system that you have, I want you to think about delegating as a form of self-care and to realize that the people in your life really want to help, that really it's often doing them a gift and that they are often sitting there thinking, I wish I knew how to help this family and I don't know how. And when you have something like IanaCare, you can tell them really specifically, this is exactly what I need. And they love it because then they're not sort of guessing how they can be helpful. They know exactly what you need and they're able to help. So I would consider this app or some other system and just start to think about, are there things that you can delegate to others as a form of self-care? So a couple of takeaways here today. It's not your fault if you are stressed or if you're burnt out. It's not. I want you to kind of sit with that one for a minute. I want you to sit with this one as well, that you are worthy of wellness. Just want you to sit with that for a minute, not just so that you can take care of others, but just because you're an amazing human and we want you to be well. Self-care can happen in micro moments. You don't have to find a whole day to go to the spa. It can be a teeny tiny thing, like putting on a pair of cozy socks or grabbing that mug or stopping or knowing that you're going to get that special coffee on Friday. Look for ways that you can build little bits of support and comfort into your daily routines. Remember that delegating is a form of self-care. That's a shift for a lot of us, especially someone was saying earlier they were feeling kind of guilty, right, about even wanting care, and we can feel guilty about asking for help. But the next time someone says, are you taking care of yourself? You can say, hey, can you join my team? Because a way that I can take care of myself is by delegating. And if you can help with this, then I can go do that. That would really be helpful to me. And then I say use either the IanaCare app or something else to build up some coverage for yourself. So finally, an important form of self-care is to have some compassion for ourselves. I want us to remember that we are in incredibly challenging situations, regardless of what role you're coming to us today, that we likely never expected to be in. Most of us are not trained for it or prepared for it or paid for it. And amidst all of it, we are just doing our best. We really are. So I want us to take just a minute to be just kind of proud of ourselves for taking this time to be here today. And I want you to think about all the compassion that you give to other people in your life. And I want you to just like have a fraction of how much compassion you give to other people and to give that to yourself. So if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to close your eyes again. Put your hands on your chest. Another deep breath in and out. And you're all on your own. No one can hear you. So don't feel weird about it, but say, my story and my feelings matter. It's not my fault if I'm stressed. I am worthy of wellness. Take another big deep breath in and out. One more deep breath in and out. All right, reopen your eyes. We're going to have some time in a minute for questions and answers. But before we do that, I want you to remind yourself to be especially kind to yourself today. This isn't me saying like, take care of yourself, right? But this session, like this is in the middle of your day, and this may have brought some things up for you. And so I just want you to pay attention to kind of how you feel for the rest of the day. Drink lots of water, try to breathe, have compassion for yourself. Try some of these little cozy things that we talked about as you go through the rest of the day. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I would love for us to go back to the Q&A, and they can't unmute and talk, right?
Correct. I believe that is true. So and I apologize for those settings, everyone, so we can continue using the Q&A. That would be great.
Okay, great. So talk to me in the, oh, I see a question already. So yes, in the chat, I'll answer this last one here quick, and then questions, you can also fight back. And you can say, really, no, delegating is not going to work for me. Or really, you know what I mean? Like, let's talk about it. Questions that you have, comments, how any of this landed with you, any of that. So I'm going to start with this last one. Delegating can require more work at first unless I get some people to help. Yes. And it's so hard. The app is amazing. It's totally amazing. And we can put, I'll put my email address, or maybe Carissa can in the Q&A. And if you have any questions, I have used the app for years. And so I'm happy to support you through the process if you want. Self-compassion idea. I often think, what would I advise a friend in this situation? Yes, exactly. So I think about that to the person who's anonymous who said that when we think about like, I can't ask for help. What if you knew that your good friend had a cancer diagnosis in their house? You would want to be helping them. You would want to be over there. You would want to be on that team and showing up and doing things for them. And you'd be sitting there going, how should I do this? You would be compassionate about them. And so I think that's so smart what you just said about thinking about how would you treat a friend who is in the same situation, and do that to you. My spouse has been trying to keep a positive attitude with her cancer diagnosis. She gets frustrated when the people around her are stressed or anxious. I try keeping my stress to myself sometime, but she notices when I'm stressed due to my body language. How do I feel like it's not my fault that I am stressed, and trying not to hide my stress from her? Yes, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so it's hard. I think especially, so I too am a spousal caregiver, and it's a hard thing when you're used to tackling life's problems together. And now suddenly there's this thing, but usually it's like, oh, I had a hard day at work. So then this person can say like, oh, I can support you with that. But this is a thing that you're both experiencing, albeit differently, but you're both experiencing it. So it can feel really hard to figure out how to support each other and to make sure that that caregiver gets support. And so I think for you, it's not your fault that you're stressed. I think that in your setting, it sounds like, what are some ways that you can relieve some of that stress? What are some ways, what are some outlets? Who are other people in your life that you can talk to about that stress? So if your wife is more, or your spouse is more like, I want us to be positive around here, and you're like, cool, I can do that while I'm here. That doesn't mean the stress just poof goes away and that you can just say, okay, I'm not going to feel it, right? It makes perfect sense that you feel stressed. And so I would just say, where are some other places? I'm a big proponent of therapy. I offer one-on-one caregiver coaching if that's something you're interested in. So find a friend, just something so that you can still have an outlet. Because what you can't do, but what too many of us try to do, is just like shove it down and say, I'm just not going to feel any of it. And our bodies and our brains are smarter than that. So they only let us shut it down for so long before it comes out sideways. So find a way that you can let it out in another place so that your wife can also have sort of that environment that she is asking for in this time. Great question.
I'll also just pipe in too.
Yeah.
If if you can find some kind of support group, I feel like for a lot of times I hear so often from partners, like they feel like they just don't have the space to say anything negative, and especially if it's about the person that is ill that they're caring for, because they just feel like jerks. So
Mhm.
sometimes feeling validated in a space of other people who are like, you can just speak freely and again, get that validation from others. So if you can find a support group with other caregivers, partners, again, we do offer a monthly one for if you're caregiving for someone with cancer.
Great. Oh, somebody else put another resource or lifeline website in there. That's awesome. I'll say too, that I also have a podcast with a fellow spousal caregiver, because what we have found is that there's a lot of resources for people caregiving for their parents, but not a lot for people like us, which is why I'm so glad that this series exists. And so thinking about it's called In Sickness, and you can find it anywhere you get podcasts, but it's another spousal caregiver who's around my same age and I talking about what it's like to be a spouse in this situation. So yeah, because it looks like a lot of you have this same situation. Oh yeah, can you put info about the monthly support group in there? They're asking.
Yes, will do. Thank you for catching that.
Yes, and on online support groups. Yes, absolutely. Yep. And I think one thing too, and obviously everybody's situation is different, so you have to decide that for yourself. But I think you want to still be honest with your partner, right? You don't want, you know, partnerships and marriages are based on honesty. And so you don't just want to say, I feel great, right? But I think it's one thing to say, I'm feeling a little stressed. And so I'm going to go to the support group. I feel a little stressed. And so I'm going to go, you know, kayaking or whatever it is. And so, but I think know your person and know what they're up, what they're okay with. But I think it's also important that they know that this is impacting you as well. They don't have to take care of it because you're going to find that somewhere else, but that you're not just shoving it down and that they know how that feels. Therapist who will take Medicare. Yeah. Unfortunately, I know it's really unfortunate how challenging it can be to find good mental health support and how needed it is. So that might be the kind of thing if any of you have a social worker that they might be able to do. I will also say that we recently got an insurance broker, which is a person who's free, and they help us with all the Medicare, like finding the right plans and finding a plan that covers this kind of thing. And so, especially right now is open enrollment time, and so it might be a good time to see if there's an insurance broker available in your area because it's at no cost, and it's been like a game changer for me to have that person. What are other questions you're having or reactions you're having to any of this? Things that are hard that you want to talk about? And I'll say, as you write, I'll say to piggyback on what Carissa said, is that that's exactly why I started this nonprofit, is called The Negative Space, and not just, it's sort of a play on words. It's not just that it's a place to be negative, but if you think about the artistic concept of negative space, that's like everything that's in the background. And so I think as caregivers, everybody focuses on the patient, as they should, and we're in the background and we're a huge part of the picture. And that's why I started it, because I just saw caregivers who were only feeling like they could say, like, this is so great and I love being a caregiver, and weren't ever feeling like they were able to say how hard it was. Yeah, taking time for myself feels like I'm putting more work on my spouse to pick up my slack when she is the one with the illness, and that can feel selfish. Yes, I absolutely get it. And so that's why I wonder a couple things. One is, like, are there any of those little easy things that you can just add into the things that are already happening, right? You're getting dressed, you're getting your coffee mug, you're taking your walk, you're whatever those things are. So it doesn't take any extra work. The other thing is to be really honest, if you can, to say, for me to be able to walk through this, I need this one thing. I know one spousal caregiver who like their priorities at their house is like her care, his work, and then he started doing CrossFit. And like everyone in the house knows that like this is the way that dad like gets like processes and feels better, and everything is better in the house when dad gets to go to CrossFit. So everybody knows that it's an expectation that on whatever days at whatever time he goes. And so I think that can sometimes help if you have a scheduled something about like on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock, I always go to the support group, or I always go to this class, or I always go to whatever. And just sort of set it up that way. That can feel a little less challenging. And also for your family and your spouse to know, I'm going to, I hate to do the cup pouring thing, but like, I'm going to be better at supporting you if I get this outlet. Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So somebody's saying I get that's a tricky season. It's a little bit more when it's like when you're in active treatment, it's like, okay, all hands on deck. And then when you're in sort of a quieter season, it's a little bit like, now what do we do? Right? How to talk about your own self-care when the topic can be a bit of a trigger for the patient. Yeah. So I think if it would be a trigger for your spouse to hear that you need some self-care in relationship to because of her diagnosis, then I think it's okay to just, I think all of us in the world, right? We just all lived through a lot in these last couple of years. So I think you don't have to maybe attach it to that, but just to say, I'm feeling a little, whatever adjectives you want to use that can describe how you're feeling. And I think it would be good for me to build in, to go to a therapist, to go out with my buddies once a week, to go to this, to take a walk, to whatever. And you don't have to tie it to her diagnosis if you feel like that will be triggering, but just to say it's in this season, here's something that I feel like would be good for me. And so I'm going to start to do that. And to maybe detach it from that and just make it about you and what you need. Yeah, you can try that and see. Great questions coming up here. Other questions or scenarios or wonderings? If any of you type, I'll say to that last friend as well, is that, sometimes, the seasons can look a little bit like this. So I'm really glad you're in this quiet season. And if you build something in right now, in this quiet season of like every Tuesday I do this thing, then that will sort of build up your capacity so that we certainly don't have to hope that this would happen. But if anything happens in the future, that you're going to be in a better space for that. And it's already sort of built into the calendar. And so I think that was something I would say to all of you years ago. I used to like do a Zumba class, and it was like Monday at 6 p.m. and just everybody in the house knew, including me, like that was the time I was going to do it. And I think that's so much more successful than trying to each week be like, when can I sneak out? And when is, and how is, and is everybody okay? Because that's never going to happen if you do it that way. Any other questions or thoughts?
Well, I did make sure I dropped your email into the Q&A, and I know that folks have mine as well. And so please, if anything comes up after this, feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Allison, this has been so lovely. I really appreciate all of your thoughts and validation and resources. I know I certainly learned a lot, and hopefully people can take home something. I even like the idea of the micro moments. It doesn't have to be big, it can be micro, and those still can make a difference.
For sure. I don't see the email that at least in my thing.
Yeah, I think it was in response to someone. I had to answer it, but here, in case people can see the chat as well, I'm gonna also put it in the chat.
Awesome, thank you.
People can just reach out to me as well, and I can forward.
Yeah, if anyone ever wants to reach out to more information on that one-on-one coaching, like I said, the podcast is called In Sickness, or I'm on Instagram or Facebook. And so if you just want another spousal caregiver in your life, feel free to reach out or to ask any questions or anything. I would love to connect. And Chris, again, thank you for this opportunity to bring caregivers together. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Really, so much. Thank you. I know I see other people saying thank you. Really appreciate your time. I'm so glad you all could join us. And let's all go out and find a micro moment, right?
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us and be well.
Thank you.
Bye.